Boom. Balls of light falling from the sky instantly attracted the attention of everyone in Seirei. Crack. 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 A series of wooden knocking sounds sounded at this moment. This is the sound of an alarm. At this time, it's only an hour into the night. The dead Shendu of each team was walking towards their respective team buildings, but when the siren sounded, they all stopped in unison. At the same time, the teams sounded the warning. Emergency alert. Emergency alert. Emergency alert. There are intruders attacking in Seirei. All teams are requested to defend their positions. The warning sounded 3 times in a row. The entire Seirei was alerted by the successive warnings. A team, the power center of Gote 13th Division. In an empty room, a bald old man sat behind a desk, and slowly opened his eyes when he heard the alarm ringing in his ears. This bald old man is the captain of a team. At the same time, it is Yamamoto Uanryusai who is called the strongest Shinigami in the millennium. Sasaki, Yamamoto Genryanagi said suddenly. Yes, Your Excellency Pingzi Jai. A man dressed in white haori came out from the darkness. Go find out who the enemy is, how many are there, what is their purpose, and then, defeat them. Every word, Yamamoto Genryusai's voice became more serious. In the end, he even got up from the armchair and walked outside the team building. Seeing the ball of light falling from the sky, he ordered angrily. Yes, Your Excellency Pingzi Jai. After taking the order, Chojiro Sasaki silently stepped aside. Only Yamamoto Genryusai was left alone, standing alone outside the team building, staring at the ball of light that fell from the sky. Pity, the distance of the ball of light is too far away. Even with his eyesight, he could only see vague black dots. But it was this fuzzy black spot that made him extremely angry, and if it wasn't for Seirei's scruples, he even planned to solve it himself. How many years have there been no attacks? Someone actually challenged Seirei's majesty again today. It is unforgivable. 5th Squad House Aizen Sosuke walked into the courtyard. Looking up into the air, staring at the slowly falling ball of light, there is still a gentle smile on the corner of his mouth. Come yet? The plan, it's time to implement it. Although it is slightly different from what I expected, it is not a big problem. Then, I will work hard on you, Yin. The voice fell, the same figure came out from the darkness. Are you ready to start planning for many years? This is a man with short light purple hair, dressed in Captain Haori, and a smiling man. Of course, the actors in the pipeline have already appeared, and now it's our turn. Aizen smiled, he is also looking forward to his plan. Looking forward to the moment when Hogyoku will be fully perfected after the plan is completed. Really, it seems that the boring captain game is finally coming to an end. Ichimaru Jin looked up into the air, so that Aizen couldn't see his expression clearly. Kuchiki Mansion just got back from the camp. Byakuya Kuchiki, who didn't even have time to take off his clothes, looked up into the air, and a trace of astonishment flashed across his plain face. Natsuki just came to visit at home yesterday. Invaders have invaded Seirei from midair this evening. If it is said that this matter has nothing to do with Natsuki, no one will believe it if it is said. But watching the ball of light falling slowly, the astonishment on Byakuya Kuchiki's face turned to disappointment. This is how you save Rukia. Clenching his hands unconsciously, an unconcealable anger arises spontaneously. If we assume, before Natsuki appeared yesterday, he has given up on Rukia's execution, but after Natsuki came to the door, he was confident that he could save Rukia, but it gave birth to a glimmer of hope in the already dead heart. Fantasizing that Natsuki could really save Rukia. Never thought this hope lasted only a day. Just with this ball of light falling from the sky, it completely vanished into nothingness. Rescuing Rukia as an intruder made Byakuya Kuchiki, who knows Seirei's strength, understand that this is nothing more than hitting a stone with a pebble. At the same time, the captains of each team looked at the sky together. Under this dark night, the ball of light falling from the sky is as bright and conspicuous as a lamp in the dark. Over Seirei, looking at the increasingly clear building complex on the ground, there was a trace of tension on everyone's face. Arisawa Tatsuki exclaimed, "Is this Seirei so big?" Ishida Uryu pushed his eyes and muttered softly. Although the style is backward, the Shinigami's technological strength is not weak to be able to build such a group of buildings. Compared to the amazement of the two, Natsuki had an idea, and looked at Ganju curiously. Gantu, can you control the shield and fly in the direction of the 13th Division? Squad 13? Ganju heard the 13th Division. Looking at Natsuki in confusion, he recalled it before answering. Squad 13. I remember this is the squad that Big Brother used to be in. Do you want to go there? 13 divisions. Ganju is the most impressive fan team. When Shiba Kyan was still alive, he also played in it, and vaguely remembered a sick captain. The voice fell. There was a gleam of joy on Natsuki's face. He just asked casually, but he didn't expect Ganju to really know the location of the 13th squad, so he asked immediately. Since you can go to Division 13, I will trouble you, Ganju. Okay. I'll adjust the direction now. Seeing that the rest of the people didn't refute, Ganju simply followed Natsuki's idea. Under the control of Griffin, the shells really rushed in the direction of the 13th Division. At the same time, although everyone is curious, why do you want to set the landing point as the 13th Division? But thinking about the relationship between Natsuki and Rukia, thinking that Rukia had told Natsuki something, he didn't think much about it. However, Yoruichi's eyes flickered slightly. It knows more than anyone else in the team, and even the relationship between himself and Jashiro Yukitake can be considered. Know that Jashiro has a gentle personality. So did you deliberately choose the 13th Division as the landing point? I have to say, compared to finding a place to land at random, this is a smarter choice. And at this moment, Natsuki didn't know how to be seen through. Will everyone disperse during this raid? He looked at the building complex that became clearer and clearer, a little curious. In the plot, a group of people were forced to disperse because the shells were not strong enough, and they broke up after hitting the soul-cloaking membrane. But this time, Shiba Kuzuru taught Ichigo himself. Ichigo's mastery of spiritual power has improved by more than one notch. Although there were some ups and downs when inputting spiritual power into the Lingzu core just now, he managed to control the spiritual power to the same level as everyone else. No one interferes. Griffin's two-stage chant was perfectly completed. The strength of the shell shield is the strongest. Will everyone be scattered like in the plot? With curiosity, the shells landed to a certain height. The soul-shielding membrane condensed by the murderous aura stone appeared, and the cannonball directly hit it. Boom. Cannonballs in occult membranes squeeze each other. There was an ear-piercing roar, constantly reverberating in the air. But in the end, the full-body strength protective shield was even better, barely breaking through the soul-obscuring membrane, full of lightning and falling towards the 13th Division. Looking shaky, it seems that it will disintegrate in the air if you are not careful. However, accidents often happen at such moments. When the shells crossed more than half of Seireii, they were still a little away from the 13th Division and fell. Boom. I saw a thunder force coming from the ground. Be careful, someone is attacking. Natsuki's eyes were sharp, and he was the first to notice the abnormality. It's too late, we're going to hit it. The Griffin also spotted the attack, but had no time to dodge it. This is fiery lightning howl. No, it's a higher-level Phaelong Smite thunder cannon. At the same time, seeing the power of thunder coming, Yoruichi widened his eyes subconsciously and quickly shouted, "Hurry up! Everyone hold on to your companions, this attack is harder than a soul mask." But the sound just fell. The attacking Dragon Strike Thief thunder cannon hit the protective shield. Moment, the already crumbling protective cover. It was directly shattered under this powerful attack, and the impact of the explosion turned into Uzumaki, scattering everyone. Kurosaki-san, Inoue Orihime was the first to be thrown off. He looked in horror at Kurosaki Ichigo, who was closest to him. Damn it, Orihime, wait a minute, I'll come right over. Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes widened when he heard the call, and he struggled to lean over. Before throwing it off completely, successfully caught Inoue Orihime's right hand. But the next moment, the figures of the two disappeared from everyone's eyes and fell towards the ground. Ichigo, Orihime. Seeing the two disappear, Arisawa Tatsuki shouted subconsciously. But she didn't notice at all. A new vortex formed behind her, and was swallowed into most of her body in an instant. Long Gui, grab my hand. Among the group of people, Natsuki is the closest to Longui. Before he had time to think about it, he stretched out his hand, and now his height of 185 came into play, successfully grabbing Long Gui's right hand. But at this moment, Uzumaki, who devoured Longui, suddenly burst, and the strong recoil directly pulled the two of them to the ground. Everyone, don't let go. At this time, the remaining few people were also affected. I saw 3 people and a cat being rolled together and falling towards the ground. In an instant, the 8-person team that was still full just now was scattered like the original work. But the difference is, this time the team members have changed. It became a team of Orihime and Ichigo, a team of Natsuki and Ryuki, and the remaining 3 and 1 cat team. This moment, the radiant ball of light that descends from the sky. It turned into 3 meteors, dragging afterimages and falling to the ground. This beautiful and splendid scene immediately attracted countless Shinigami, chasing away to the place where the meteor fell. Ding-a-ling, ding-a-ling, the bell sound from nowhere suddenly rang. Seirei 5th Squad Open Space Center. Yeah, Captain Aizen is really a bad joke. Ichimaru Jin looked up into the air, but at some point a huge ryotsu condensed from his right hand, as if he had just done something unknown. Turning around and looking at Aizen behind him, he joked. Obviously we just need to wait for the plan to start normally, but we insist on tearing everyone apart. Listen to Ichimaru Jin's jokes. Aizen's expression didn't change at all, and he continued to explain with a smile. Seirei has been quiet for hundreds of years, I think it's time for him to move. 100 years, facing Aizen's explanation. Ichimaru Jin obviously didn't care, he waved his hands and went straight back to the 3rd team's team building. Just before, the order from the 1st team has been conveyed. The captains of each team need to guard in their own team to prevent intruders from breaking in, but they don't have enough strength to defend. And at this moment, looking at the back of Ichimaru Jin leaving, Aizen smiled, then looked up into the sky, and saw 3 meteors falling from the sky. But he kept his eyes on one of the meteors. The line of sight penetrated the outermost spiritual barrier, and focused on the boy with orange hair. Kurosaki Ichigo. It's kind of curious, how far can you grow in Soul Society? Midair Kurosaki Ichigo grabs Inoue Orihime's right hand. Seeing that the other party was still in shock, he couldn't help comforting him. Don't worry, with me by your side, nothing will happen. Hearing this sentence, Orihime looked up blankly. Seeing Ichigo's resolute expression, the panic in my heart gradually calmed down, and a flash of determination flashed in my eyes. I know. When speaking, his left hand unconsciously brushed the hairpin on his head. After special training, I have mastered the power to help everyone, not just hiding behind everyone like before. Then, Inoue Orihime's gaze was fixed on the ground. At the moment when the two were about to land, they chanted loudly. Huo Wuju, Mei Yan, Lily, 3-day shield, I refuse. The sound fell instantly. The hairpin on her head shone with a shine. Immediately, 3 elves appeared in front of them, forming a triangular shield, which successfully caught the two of them, avoiding the injuries caused by falling from high altitude. Wow! Awesome, Orihime! Coming down from the triangular shield, Ichigo praised Inoue Orihime in surprise. A happy look appeared on Inoue Orihime's face, she can also help others. But more fortunately, the location where the two fell seemed to be a deserted training ground, not surrounded by Shinigami, giving them plenty of reaction time. The other side, Sado, Rain Dragon, Griffin, Yoruichi. 3 people and 1 cat crowded together in a ball of spirit particles, and quickly fell towards the ground. Hey, whoever thinks of a way. Looking at the approaching ground, Griffin burst into tears of terror. But unexpectedly there were 2 people and 1 cat with him. Sado, Uryu and Yoruichi are more calm than the other. I don't think you will fall to your death at this height. Sado rolled his eyes at the ground, and replied lightly to Griffin. My flying feet are enough to cushion the impact at the moment of landing. Ishida Uryu stretched out his index finger and pushed his glasses, and gave his answer with a light smile on the corner of his mouth. Damn it, Quincy is really enviable. Griffin looked at Yulong enviously, and then looked at Yoruichi squatting on his shoulder. Meow. I'm a cat. Yoruichi raised a paw, pointed at himself and meowed. Griffin helplessly sighed. At this moment, Ganju felt that he was really weak. The 2 people and 1 cat I met were unreliable at all, and it seemed that I could only rely on myself. Thinking of this, I suddenly became confident. Really, in the end, I still have to do it myself. After all, His eyes were fixed on the ground, and when the group of people were only a few meters away from the ground, he drew a circle in the air with his right hand and said loudly, "Become sand, Shibo." The voice fell, a ray of light emanated from his hand. It irradiated towards the ground, and immediately, the ground that was irradiated turned into a pool of fine sand. Next moment, 3 people and 1 cat smashed into the fine sand with precision. In Spirit Barrier, because of being affected by Uzumaki, Long Gui fell into a coma. "Longui, are you alright?" Natsuki patted her face, trying to wake her up, but it didn't work at all. At the same time, seeing that it is getting closer and closer to the ground, Natsuki could only put Longui behind his back and concentrate on looking down. Immediately, at the moment of landing, lightly tap the ground with 1 foot, perfectly removing the impact of the fall. Suddenly, crack, 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 suddenly the sound of coarse ore sounded from the side. Along with the sound of coarse ore, there are bursts of bells. Fall from such a high place, you can still be intact. Boy, you seem to be very resistant to chopping. I knew it. Natsuki turned around helplessly. One is wearing a captain's haori, with Zhongyang hair and a small bell tied at the end. Wearing an eye patch over his right eye and holding a sawtooth zanpakuto, the figure looks at him with a grin. This person, it is the captain of Gotei 13th Division and 11th Division. It is also the 11th generation of Soul Society Kenpachi, Zaraki Kenpachi. And the place where Natsuki fell down is the opponent's 11th team. At this time, Zaraki Kenpachi raised a ferocious smile and announced to Natsuki, "Although I don't know who you are, but since you dare to fall into my territory, are you ready to be hacked to death by me?" At the same time, there was also a figure on his back. A little loli with pink hair jumped down and said with a chuckle, "Mr. Intruder, Ah Jian is bored, please fight him well. I have a name, it's called Mashu." Natsuki knows that Yachi Ryu has the habit of giving people nicknames. Before she gave herself a strange nickname, she quickly introduced herself. Sound falls. Zaraki Kenpachi on the side couldn't take it anymore. Stomp on the ground hard, use the powerful recoil to accelerate the knife and slash towards Natsuki. Almost instantly, the whole person appeared in front of Natsuki. Rustle. There is no skill in this knife chop. But the powerful and rough Ryotsu gave this knife an invincible aura, cutting through the air and making a whining sound. Ding. Although suddenly, Natsuki drew his sword at the first time and blocked it. But Zaraki Kenpachi's exaggerated to pervert power directly penetrated Natsuki's body and pressed down on the entire ground under his feet. Boom. A spider web-like trace appeared in place. Zaraki Kenpachi couldn't be happier to see Natsuki take the knife from himself and still be safe. "Ha ha ha, you really are very resistant to cutting. Little devil, your name is Natsuki, right? Put down the woman on your body and have a hearty fight with me." Natsuki also knows, it is indeed inconvenient to fight with Long Gui on his back. Fighting got in the way, worrying about hurting her, there are still many movements that cannot be performed. Simply, put Long Gui down directly from behind. Then he looked at Yachiryu, who was happily watching the battle, and asked, "I want to seriously fight the AGN you mentioned, can you help take care of Long Gui?" Here Natsuki want to fight seriously. With a pure smile on Yachinlu's face, he agreed. "Okay. As long as you and a GN fight seriously, I will help you take care of this girl." Finished speaking, a Shunpo appeared in front of Natsuki. Holding Long Gui, who was much bigger than himself, with one hand, Shunpo returned to the original position again. At the same time, Natsuki finally removed the woman who was in the way. Zaraki Kenpachi couldn't bear the mad fighting spirit in his heart any longer, he laughed wildly and went to the truth. "Ha ha ha, swing your knife, cut me, fight together." Smiling, Zaraki Kenpachi laughing wildly. As his laughter rises, more and more Ryotsu burst out of him. But, PFFTK, Zaraki Kenpachi's forward movement suddenly froze. Subconsciously lowering his head, he looked at his heart and saw a knife mark that was not too long cut here. Due to injury, blood slowly spilled out from the wound. When Zaraki's sword Lori looks a little dull. I didn't realize when the attack came. Captain Shinigami, don't be in a daze during the battle.
Natsuki stood a few meters behind Kenpachi,
carried Yuri in the sealed state on his shoulders, turned around and joked to Zaraki Kenpachi, who was staring blankly at his wound in the distance. Certainly, jokes are jokes, there is no shortage of vigilance in my heart. At the current stage, Zaraki Kenpachi subconsciously sealed his own strength because he couldn't find an opponent. But even so, the indomitable knife of his strong flesh. Still a serious threat, at least to Natsuki, who has yet to grasp the solution. Ha 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 ha. Zaraki Kenpachi, who was quietly watching the wound in his heart. He clenched the Zanpakuto tightly in his hand, and laughed happily, even tears gathered in the corners of his eyes because he was too happy. Happy. He is so happy. Feeling the aura emanating from Natsuki's body, he couldn't help but tremble slightly. The skin on his body was as excited as a pinprick. Subconsciously looking at Natsuki, seeing Zanpakuto that was still dripping blood in the opponent's hand, the fighting spirit in his heart suddenly flourished again. A puff of hot air came out of his mouth. You are more resistant to chopping than the previous garbage. The moment the voice fell, Zaraki Kenpachi drew his sword and slashed towards Natsuki again, but this time, his sword had a bit more killing intent. I hope you can take a few more knives. Natsuki also raised his sword and slashed at Zaraki Kenpachi. However, compared to Zaraki Kenpachi's chaotic slashing, Natsuki's chopping technique is undoubtedly more advantageous. Ding. Two Zanpakuto chopped together. At the moment of contact, there is a piercing sound of iron clanging. Both parties clenched Zanpakuto in their hands, and pressed hard towards each other at the same time, but they were pressed back by the other party. You boy, that's not bad. Not to mention Kenpachi grinned. How strong is your own? Not to mention Kenpachi is the clearest. But this guy who fell from the sky was comparable to him in strength, so he couldn't help admiring him. You're not bad either, you're the Kenpachi of this generation. Natsuki also smiled. The strength in the hand is gradually increasing, and Zanpakuto gradually overwhelms Zaraki Kenpachi at this moment. Bleeding outfit. This is the skill learned from the Quincy Handbook. Directly inject spiritual seeds into the blood vessels to increase the power of the flesh to ultimate. I have learned this skill for a long time, but it is the first time to actually use it in battle, but the effect is amazing. Yachiryu watched as Natsuki's power overwhelmed Zaraki Kenpachi. Not only was there no trace of worry on his face, but he smiled happily, and suddenly two dimples appeared on both sides of his cheeks. Natsuki is strong. This is the conclusion she reached through the fight between the two. But her Zaraki Kenpachi isn't bad either. Yachiryu focused her eyes on the two of them. And at this moment, looking at Zanpakuto pressing towards me, Zaraki Kenpachi laughed happily. Ha ha ha, it's interesting, it's really interesting. But also in this moment, he exerted force again in his hand, and Zanpakuto, who was pressing towards him, was directly shaken away by him. Immediately, no intention of defending at all. The empty door was wide open, and he slashed towards Natsuki's heart with a knife in one hand, intending to give him the same injury as his own heart. Pity, Natsuki's sentience given to him by his fighting instinct. It made him aware of Zaraki Kenpachi's intention at the first time, and his body moved sideways sensitively. A flash of light. In an instant, a smooth trace was cut out of the building in the distance, and it slowly slid aside. No cut. Zaraki Kenpachi's eyes are even more excited. It would be too boring if Natsuki was hacked by him like this. At the same time, because of the huge movement when it fell, the members of the 11th squad got up to this one after another. Hurry up, it's here. I see that it seems to have fallen to Captain Zaraki, go. Don't let the boss snatch the prey, everyone come up with me and find him. However, when this group of 11th team members, when I rushed here, I saw Natsuki and Zaraki Kenpachi fighting, but they suddenly shut their mouths and slowed down their movements. Quiet, keep quiet. Don't move, don't disturb the boss fight. Anyone who dares to move and disturb the boss's battle will cause us to be chopped off. We'll cut you off first. Feel the number of Shinigami increase around you. Natsuki didn't care. Instead, he took advantage of the brief moment when the two were separated, and made fun of Zaraki Kenpachi. Looking at the performance of your team members, they seem to be quite afraid of you. Ha ha ha. I don't care about them, as long as I can cut as much as I can, not to mention Kenpachi grinned. Zanpakuto in hand is not satisfied at all. Cut towards Natsuki again. this time at a tricky angle, because of the left side of Natsuki's shoulder. If you want to block this knife, it means that Natsuki has to raise his knife to meet him, exposing his belly. However, I never thought that Natsuki had no intention of defending at all, and slashed away with Yuli in his hand. Ding. Puff. Two voices sounded at the same time. First sound, it's Zaraki Kenpachi splitting Natsuki's voice. Second tone, it's the sound of Natsuki cross-cutting Zaraki Kenpachi. But the difference is, Natsuki slashes Kenpachi, blood keeps coming from the belly. But Zaraki Kenpachi's knife stayed on the surface of Natsuki's shoulder without causing any damage. Watching this scene, all the Shinigami onlookers were stunned. No, it's impossible, Zaraki boss was hacked. Stupid. Looking at being stabbed in the abdomen. Zaraki Kenpachi whose blood keeps flowing from the wound. At this moment, all the onlookers, Shendu, who died in the 11th team, were stunned, and looked at everything in front of them dumbfounded. Really, this is absolutely impossible. How could Boss Zaraki be injured? Wait, Boss Zaraki slashed at the intruder, how did he not get hurt? But soon, shocked Shinigami looked at Natsuki. No, it should be said to be the knife that Kanko cut on Natsuki's shoulder. Zaraki Kenpachi is the strongest of the 11th team, and his strength is obvious to all. In normal battles, no one can leave a wound on him. But now the situation is reversed. His knife slashed at the intruder's body, not only failed to injure the enemy, but he was slashed in the abdomen by the enemy. Is this really the Captain Zaraki they know? And at this moment, Zaraki Kenpachi simply ignored his own players. Instead, he glanced at the wound on his abdomen and manipulated his muscles to forcefully close the wound, so as not to lose too much blood and affect the battle. Done all this, he turned his eyes to Natsuki. Hey, your Ryotsu isn't bad, brat. Ryotsu word. Also explains why Natsuki was not injured. It's not that strong, it's just a little bit stronger than the Ryotsu on you. He flicked Yuli casually to shake off the blood on the sword. Natsuki was right. Zaraki Kenpachi because Ryotsu is too strong. The body surface is often covered with a layer of almost substantive high concentration Ryotsu, which can isolate external attacks. But this layer of high concentration Ryotsu is not unbreakable. As long as the released Ryotsu is stronger than the layer of Ryotsu covering Zaraki Kenpachi's body surface, it can be cracked. However, listen to Natsuki's almost provocative words. Not only is Zaraki Kenpachi not angry, but he appreciates Natsuki more and more. Haha, kid, I'm starting to be interested in you. You are Shinigami too. Do you want to come to my 11th team? Natsuki did not answer, he just smiled and raised the glass in his hand again. Zaraki Kenpachi doesn't mind about this either. For him, inviting people is not as refreshing as fighting. But, this time he didn't attack directly. Instead, he stretched out his left hand and touched the blindfold on his right eye. Watching this scene, the 11th squad Shinigami onlookers stared wide-eyed. They were shocked at the fact that Zaraki Kenpachi was injured, but they never thought that Zaraki Kenpachi would have to lift his own seal. Who the hell is this intruder? With such a strong strength, why have I never heard of his name? Certainly, there is no lack of smart people among the Shinigami onlookers. Seeing that Zaraki Kenpachi was about to take off the blindfold, he quickly pulled the team members who had a good relationship back a few steps. The captain is going to break the seal. What? The captain wants to break the seal. Run. Hey, wait for me, you guys wait for me, don't leave me. The team members who had seen Zaraki Kenpachi lift the seal in the past ran away in panic. However, it is too late now. How could the speed of running be compared to the speed of Zaraki Kenpachi taking off the blindfold? Boom. Zaraki Kenpachi tore off the blindfold on his right eye. A wave of Ryotsu that was several times the level before burst out. The air became heavy at this moment, making people feel as if they were wearing a thick layer of armor. At the same time, this burst of Ryotsu, radiating towards the surroundings, wherever it passes, the ground is too fierce. Plop plop, the Shinigami who were watching the battle, even more oppressed by this burst of Ryotsu and unable to move on the ground. Those with weaker strength lay on the ground with a pale face and kept spitting blood, and even fell into a faint. Just a breath. The Shinigami who were still surrounded all lost their ability to fight. Only the few sharp-eyed team members who left first managed to escape the catastrophe. Monster. Captain Zaraki is amazing. This level of Ryotsu is simply beyond our imagination. Shinigami who survived, watching Zaraki Kenpachi just burst into Ryotsu. Such a terrifying scene was triggered, and they all swallowed their saliva with difficulty, conquering for the strength of their captain. And at this moment, after lifting the seal, Zaraki Kenpachi stood on the spot and moved his shoulders, allowing the Ryotsu, which was so huge that it could be called pervert, to vent wantonly. Subsequently, turning sharply to look at Natsuki, he grinned grinningly. Little ghost, I've been waiting for a long time. Let's start the second round of fighting. Sound falls, and it doesn't matter if Natsuki is ready or not. Pick up the long knife in your hand and step on it, attacking Natsuki with a strong recoil. Have you lifted the sealing device? The corners of Natsuki's mouth raised slightly, and he unconsciously clenched Yuri in his hand. I was able to hurt Kenpachi before because he was not in good condition, and he was wearing a device to absorb slave pressure while sealing himself. But now it's different. After feeling that Natsuki is strong enough to fight, he instinctively let go of part of his own strength, and now he added the unsealed device. The strength has been raised several levels in an instant. Facing Zaraki Kenpachi at the current level, he will not push him up at will. Zanpakuto had already returned to its sheath at some point. Natsuki held the handle of the knife with one hand, pulled it out slowly, and said word by word. Let's enjoy the baptism of blood together, Yoli. The moment the sound fell, the appearance of Zanpakuto in the hand has changed. The narrow, straight and black blade is 145 centimeters long, even longer than Zanpakuto of Zaraki Kenpachi. At the same time, a phantom appeared beside Natsuki, wearing a Zanpakuto at the waist that is exactly the same as Natsuki's hand. The moment they appeared, a faint blue Ryotsu was linked between one person and one shadow. Fight with me. Follow your orders, my lord Natsuki. When the sound falls, it was also the moment when Zaraki Kenpachi appeared in front of him. A terrifying knife slashed at the two of them, and at the same time his mad voice sounded. Zanpakuto Shikai. Ha ha ha, brat. What else do you have? Show them all. For this, Yuli swung the saber first, block a slash from Zaraki Kenpachi. Natsuki followed the rhythm and slashed towards Kenpachi's chest. Ding. The clanging of iron tools resounded. This time, unlike the previous several times of successfully causing damage, the attack was blocked by the high-concentration Ryotsu on Zaraki Kenpachi. This also shows that, after breaking the seal, his Ryotsu surpasses Natsuki. Sensing the icy feeling in his chest, Kenpachi grinned and said, Hey, kid, why don't you continue to attack me? If you don't attack, then let me attack you. Sound falls. Vibrate your hand vigorously, and vibrate Yuli's Zanpakuto. Before the two of them could react in the future, they raised their Zanpakuto high and slashed down hard. Scoff. The sound of flesh being cut by a knife resounded. However, blood gushes from Zaraki Kenpachi's back. He looked at the empty ground in front of him in surprise, and then turned around to look. Natsuki standing in front of me clearly. Why did it appear behind me and hurt me again? Puzzled, Zaraki Kenpachi asked with some incomprehension. Hey, kid, is this your Zanpakuto ability? A few meters away Natsuki and Yuri stood side by side. Listening to Zaraki Kenpachi's inquiry to himself, he nodded indifferently, and then kindly reminded. A friendly reminder. My Shikai is all about fighting. So you have to be careful next, don't be starved for a second. Totally serve the battle. You say that, I'm getting more and more interested in your Zanpakuto. Zaraki Kenpachi smiles excitedly. He drew his sword again, and rushed towards Natsuki with a wild laugh, bursting out a thick Ryotsu. At the same time, Natsuki is a little curious. Facing an opponent of Zaraki Kenpachi's level, how far he can do it, he said seriously. Then let you see it. The voice fell, his eyes turned to Yoli aside. The ghostly blue spiritual particles covered the bodies of both parties again, and the consciousness of the two was successfully linked at this moment. Immediately, Yuri stepped forward with her left foot, and Natsuki stepped forward with her right foot. Yuri's left hand is held to the right waist Zanpakuto, and Natsuki's right hand is held to the left waist Zanpakuto. Boom. Ryotsu explodes on two people, but in the next moment, they all condense towards the Zanpakuto in their hands. Lowering his upper body slowly, he stared at Zaraki Kenpachi who was attacking him, 10 meters, 8 meters, 5 meters, 3 meters. You draw your sword and chop. X2 one person. One soul draws the sword at the same time. Draw the knife too fast, even 2 afterimages appeared. But compared to mere afterimages, the blade glow is even more eye-catching. There are 2 crescent-shaped saber glows on the left and one on the right, crossing and slashing forward. Looking from a distance, it looks like a big X. Terrifying power, sweeping everything along the way. Houses, concrete, and walls were all cut into several pieces by these 2 sword lights, and finally they were thrown at the enemy with an indomitable momentum. It's exciting. Looking at the oncoming X-shaped sword light, Zaraki Kenpachi's pupils keep shrinking. Come on. Zaraki Kenpachi laughs like crazy. At this moment, he felt a long-lost pressure. With the X-shaped sword light coming from the front, the Ryotsu on his body shoots up into the sky. In an instant, almost the entire Seirei. Feel the huge Ryotsu of Zaraki Kenpachi, a team. Yamamoto Yuanryasai slowly opened his eyes. Looking at the place where Ryotsu broke out, he said thoughtfully. It turned out that Zaraki Kenpachi met the intruder, so it seems that he can have a good time. At the same time, originally angry at the presence of the intruder. Also at this moment, it slowly dissipated, even almost disappeared. Because, Yamamoto Yuanyanagi knows, Zaraki Kenpachi's strength can be ranked at the top of Soul Society. With his strength, he will not be able to deal with a few intruders from the outside world. Treat several mortal characters, Yamamoto Genryasai thinks that there is no need to care too much. Team 6 Byakuya Kuchiki who just rushed back to the team building from home. They also looked at the 11th team, paying attention to the exaggerated spiritual power of Zaraki Kenpachi. But, can make Zaraki Kenpachi explode so Ryotsu? Inexplicably, the figure of Natsuki appeared in his mind. Have you grown to the point where Zaraki Kenpachi needs to go all out? 5th team Aizen Sosuke is committing suicide. No, it should be said that he was designing his own death. He was holding a corpse in his hand. It was a Shinigami who was very similar in height and build to himself. Walked towards the direction of the eastern Great Holy Wall. But the Ryotsu that broke out from the 11th team made him stop. Turned around and looked at the 11th team, with a hint of doubt in his eyes. Except Zaraki Kenpachi's Ryotsu, he sensed another Ryotsu. However, this Ryotsu was different from what he expected. Not Kurosaki Ichigo, but the human who won the heart of Rukia and gained the power of Shinigami. The feeling that this kind of thing is out of control made Aizen Sosuke slightly frown, but the next moment he regained his gentle look and whispered. An unexpected variable. Also, if things keep going according to the direction of the script, it would be too boring. Speaking of which, Aizen Sosuke suddenly laughed. The smile is not Zhongyang, even very gentle, but it gives people a feeling of confidence, as if everything in the world is under control. Besides, the captains of the rest of Seirei's teams also felt the horror that Zaraki Kenpachi erupted at this time Ryotsu. Everyone expressed a few words of emotion more or less, but then turned their attention to their own team. After all, Zaraki Kenpachi, this rude fighting madman. But he was never liked by the other captains, and some people even wished that he died on the spot in this battle. 11th team Zaraki Kenpachi is laughing maniacally. With his laughter, the Ryotsu on his body swelled up, and even rushed into the sky at the end, dyeing the sky golden. Google. A few Shinigami watching the battle from a distance. Feeling the horror spreading in front of me Ryotsu, rolling my throat up and down hard. Horror? No. Horror can no longer be used to describe the man in front of me, a monster, it must be a monster. But, fortunately, this monster is the captain of the family. Thinking of this, several people looked at each other and saw the same thought in each other's eyes. At the same time, look at the X-shaped sword light attacking towards me. Zaraki Kenpachi quietly changed from lying down with one hand to holding the knife with both hands. He condenses all the Ryotsu in his body on Zanpakuto, and the golden Ryotsu turns into a slash and strikes forward. The way of the sword. 2 breaks. Now. 2 sword glows descended in front of him. Clang. Crisp sound. X-shaped faint blue sword light and golden sword pressure compete with each other. Ryotsu collided with each other. Even if it was just an unintentional breath, it would cause a tremor when it fell to the ground. Click. 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 The pressure of the sword and the glow of the sword squeezed each other, making an ear-piercing sound. But the pressure of the sword cut by one person, after all, is almost the same as the newly released Daomongdao. Hold on for a few breaths. The golden sword that cut out with all its strength. It flickered at first, and then shattered under Zaraki Kenpachi's incredulous eyes. Did I lose? I didn't expect that I would lose. He does not understand. Why did my sword pressure lose to Natsuki? I am obviously stronger. But before he figured it out, that X-shaped sword glow has already struck. When Zaraki Kenpachi lost his mind, he held his chest and continued to fly into the distance. All the buildings along the way, under the power of this sword light, everything was reduced to ruins. If you look at it from the sky, you can see a long ravine in the 11th team building. Small sword. Watching this scene, Yachinryu can no longer sit idly by like before. A shunpo chased in the direction where Zaraki Kenpachi was knocked away, leaving Arisawa Tatsuki lying quietly on the ground. And at this moment the few remaining members of the 11th team. Seeing this scene, his eyes widened in horror, and he was stunned for a while. This is what happened. Boss Zaraki was defeated. It's fake. Everyone looked at each other. Asked if the scene just now was true or not. But the shock in everyone's eyes says it all. The boss, Captain Zaraki, failed. This moment, not to mention these ordinary Shinigami. Even the captains of the other squadrons who sensed this battle through Ryotsu were stunned. What's the situation? Zaraki Kenpachi failed. How is this possible? That is the 11th team, the captain of the Seirei combat team. Zaraki Kenpachi's Ryotsu has indeed disappeared. Hey. This is a bit different from what you said. Your strength as a contemporary Kenpachi, how could you be defeated? Hey. Shocked. All Shinigami captains are dumbfounded at this moment. A team, how dare you? Yamamoto Genryusai's face turned black. Seeing this, Chojiro, who was waiting in the dark, restrained his aura subconsciously. He knows, the strongest Shinigami in the millennium got angry. Zaraki Kenpachi, who was originally favored by him, was given to the invaders. This is not only a loss of face, but also the face of the entire Seirei. Mere intruder, defeated the Seirei combat team. The captain of the 11th team, the contemporary Kenpachi. If spread out, others may think that Seirei's strength is just this. That's it? Any random invader defeated your contemporary Kenpachi. You guys are too trash. Sasaki. Chojiro Sasaki ponders the consequences. Yamamoto Motorizai stood in the room, drawing the cane to the floor. Yes, Your Excellency Pai Zijai. Chojiro Sasaki came out from the darkness and knelt on one knee in the hall. Check it out. Information about this attack on the Soul Society invaders. Looking at the old man kneeling on one knee, Yamamoto Yuanryusai suppressed his anger and asked for the information of Natsuki and his party. Your Excellency Pizijai. The covert mobile team has received corresponding information from West Rukongai. According to the information from the residents of Rukongai West, a group of intruders who appeared this time appeared at noon yesterday, with a total of 6 people. Their purpose was to rescue Rukia Kuchiki, who was captured by the Shing army. Remittance is halfway through reporting. Chojiro Sasaki's voice paused slightly. Seeing that Yamamoto Genryusai's breath is still stable, he continued to report. According to the direction from which the attackers descended, the secret mobile team judged that the opponent's tool to enter Seirei is through the Shiba family's crane cannon. The Shiba clan. Yamamoto Genryusai frowned. He didn't expect that the family that had fallen to the point of being expelled from the 5 great nobles would actually participate in this invasion. Things were a little difficult. Things are difficult. Chojiro Sasaki sighed helplessly. He has been by Yamamoto Genryusai's side for more than 2,000 years, so he naturally knows the situation of this rambunctious family. Even, during these 2,000 years, he also worked with some members of the Shiba clan. But it is precisely because of this that he is more aware of the importance of this family, which is a family that is responsible for top-secret missions. However, the blood of the current Shiba family is withered. It is said that there are only 2 members of the immediate family left. If they accidentally disappear, no one will be able to carry out the top-secret mission. Therefore, it is learned that the Shiba clan was also involved in the invasion. Chojiro Sasaki and Yamamoto Yuanryusai both felt headaches, and there are only 2 people left in this family who cannot move yet. Quite a while, Yamamoto Motoyanagi sighed helplessly. Sasaki, go and tell Shiba the current patriarch yourself. Because of her pyrotechnic skills, Seireiti was invaded. And she was banned from taking private work in the pyrotechnic festival in Rukongai for 1 year. Chojiro Sasaki was silent. Will the punishment be a little harsher? With the current economic strength of the Shiba clan, what if they are starved to death? 11th Team unleashed Ryotsu at full power by Zaraki Kenpachi. As a result, the 11th Team was almost wiped out, and only a few officers could continue to fight. But, after learning that Natsuki won Zaraki Kenpachi, the attitude of the 11th Team Shinigami changed suddenly. From the original excitement of wanting to arrest the intruder, it has changed into respect for the strong. The weak respect the strong. This is an unchanging rule for thousands of years. What's more, here is the 11th Team with simple folk customs, and they have stronger respect for the strong. Therefore, after defeating Zaraki Kenpachi, not only did Natsuki not take Longui to escape in a hurry, but stayed in the 11th Team to scout for information. Reception room. Natsuki and Zaraki Kenpachi sat face to face. The former's breath was stable and he was almost uninjured, but the latter was covered in bandages and looked at the former with a murderous look. After Arisawa Tatsuki wakes up, he stared blankly at what was happening before his eyes. My lord, please. Shinigami, who was serving at the side, saw Arisawa Tatsuki wake up, and immediately brought a plate of water to wash his face and wake up. Natsuki, this is... Long Gui washed his face in a daze, and then looked at Natsuki in a daze. Long Gui, you're awake. Let me introduce you. This is Zaraki Kenpachi, the captain of Team 11. Natsuki in chat. See Arisawa Tatsuki's blank expression. It roughly described what happened after the two fell from midair. Combat team captain. When I heard the tall and fierce man in front of me, it turned out to be the captain of the Seireiti combat team. Long Gui couldn't help but feel worried for Natsuki. Zaraki Kenpachi's appearance is already fierce, coupled with the gimmick of the captain of the combat team. It makes people nervous when they hear it. But later heard, after Natsuki won this battle team captain, Long Gui subconsciously let out a long breath, feeling much more relaxed. TCH. I will pay you back for that revenge sooner or later, Natsuki. Zaraki Kenpachi curled his lips in displeasure. But in battle, I really lost to Natsuki. Although unhappy, I also accepted the result in my heart. He still doesn't even have the courage to admit defeat in a battle. Even after the battle, in response to inquiries from the first team, it even directly concealed the existence of the two, which is also the reason why the two can stay in the 11th Team. And at this moment, knowing that the two of them are not in danger for the time being, Arisawa Tatsuki thought of his best friend again, and asked with concern. By the way, how are Orihime and the others doing, any news? But this time without Natsuki answering, a pink-haired little loli jumped out from behind Zaraki Kenpachi, and said with a smile. Does Xiao Long want to know the information of his companion? The corner of Arisawa Tatsuki's mouth twitched. I don't understand how my childhood nickname was called out. But seeing that the little loli Shinigami didn't seem to be threatening, she nodded in confirmation and said, well, I want to know. Aside, Natsuki saw that the two got along well. He didn't care about Longui and Yachiryu's contact, looked at Kenpachi again, and asked. You just told me. Rukia's execution has been brought forward? Ah, I confirmed it with Foxface. What's the matter? After the battle, the two didn't become enemies or anything. Even because the fighting was too straightforward, the relationship between Zaraki Kenpachi and Natsuki quickly became acquainted, and they can be regarded as friends. For this, Natsuki directly stated his purpose. Enter Seireiti, just trying to save Rukia from being executed. Unexpectedly, when Natsuki said that he came to rescue Rukia, the news from Zaraki Kenpachi made his heart skip a beat. There was still a week before the execution. However, the execution time was suddenly changed yesterday afternoon, and it was brought forward to 3 days later. Zaraki Kenpachi didn't know the situation of Chu Shashu. Instead, he looked at the past seriously, and said in an expectant tone. Hey, after you agreed to save Rukia, fight me again with all your strength. This is one of the reasons why Zaraki Kenpachi befriends Natsuki. Unlike the other Shinigami in Seireiti, who looked disgusted at the idea of fighting him, Natsuki, on the contrary, agreed to it almost easily. Such a cheerful look, I really like Zaraki Kenpachi's straightforward personality. As everyone knows, Natsuki is also very fond of his straightforward and quick-witted personality in battle. Original. The attributes dropped by Long Gui and the others are already powerful enough. Unexpectedly, after fighting Zaraki Kenpachi, Natsuki knew what the joy of picking attributes is. Physical strength +1, strength +1, speed +1, strength +1. A fight down. Zaraki Kenpachi directly dropped nearly 10 attribute lights. Although they are all basic attributes, they can't hold back his huge strength. In one battle, Natsuki is not only not injured, but also a bit stronger. And at this moment, heard about Rukia's execution time change. Natsuki looked thoughtful and continued to ask Zaraki Kenpachi. Rukia's place of detention hasn't changed, has it? That kind of thing. How do I know? But I know those noble gentlemen will not easily change the original decision. Zaraki Kenpachi grinned. He was not interested in Rukia Kuchiki. If I didn't want to see the expression of the man in the 6th team, I wouldn't even inquire about this matter. But his words have already given the answer. Since the execution time has been brought forward, there is really no need to spend a lot of time changing the place of detention. This is enough. But just in case. Natsuki looked at Arisawa Tatsuki aside. Kenpachi, help me take care of Ha Long Gui, I'm going out for a while. This sentence made Zaraki Kenpachi stunned for a moment. With a look of surprise on his face, he asked in a deep voice. You guy, don't you plan to go to prison now? Natsuki did not answer. The expression on his face is extremely determined. Yesterday at noon, I waited for the talents to arrive at Soul Society, and Rukia's execution time was brought forward. This is different from the scene in the plot, and it is obviously Aizen's method, since the plot has changed. Natsuki couldn't guarantee that development would continue as smoothly as the original. So, in order to avoid mistakes, he plans to rescue Rukia before Aizen's fake death. Just as he was about to leave, a Shinigami ran in and shouted. Boss is not good, news just came out that the captain of the 5th team was killed. The moment the sound fell, everyone in the room was stunned. That Aizen guy. Was killed. Zaraki Kenpachi stared at Natsuki and subconsciously asked, when did you do this? Natsuki. Meow meow? Dongda Holy Wall. A group of Shinigami rushed over upon hearing the sound. The death of the captain brought a huge shock to Seireiti. Impossible. Captain Aizen, how could Captain Aizen? When Zaraki Kenpachi and Natsuki arrived, just in time, I saw a girl in a deadly costume kneeling on the ground, staring blankly at the corpse floating in the wind on the wall. Tick, tick, the body looked as if it had just died. Stapled to the wall by a handful of Zanpakuto, blood dripped on the ground from time to time, splashing bloody flowers. However, in the eyes of Natsuki next to Zaraki Kenpachi, this is an extremely strange corpse, but wearing the same glasses as Aizen, and wearing the captain of the 5th squad, Haori. But in the eyes of everyone influenced by Kyoka Suigetsu, the corpse pinned to the wall by his own Zanpakuto is Aizen Sosuke, captain of the 5th team. It's so lively here, a playful voice came from behind. Natsuki and all the Shinigami around turned around subconsciously. I saw a man with short light purple hair, dressed in Captain Haori, and a smiling man walking from a distance. He looked at the corpse pinned to the wall. Not only is there no surprise, but there is a feeling of gloating. Ah, isn't this the captain of Aizen? Why is it hanging on the wall? The moment the sound falls, all eyes on the scene turn to Ichimaru Jin. Without him, Ichimaru Jin's performance was too calm. There is a feeling as if he has been aware of it for a long time. Of course, this gloating tone is also the reason for everyone's suspicion. I see, it's you. Hinamori Momo stared fixedly at Ichimaru Jin. But the advice Captain Aizen gave her during the day came to mind. Recently, when performing missions, remember to be careful of the 3rd team, and if you notice something is wrong, report to me as soon as possible. At first, listen to Captain Aizen's inexplicable advice. Hinamori Momo still doesn't understand, but he doesn't want Captain Aizen, who was advising him during the day, to die quietly at night. At the same time, on collocation Ichimaru Jin, the gloating expression when he saw Captain Aizen's body just now, instantly ignited the anger in Hinamori Momo's heart, thinking that the man in front of him was the murderer of Captain Aizen. You killed Captain Aizen, absolutely unforgivable. Hinamori Momo pulled out Zanpakuto from his waist and rushed towards Ichimaru Jin. This sudden scene made the unsuspecting heavy Shinigami unable to react. They could only watch Hinamori Momo rushing forward. Wait. Waikong Matsumoto Rangaku in the crowd trying to stop it all. It's a pity that Hinamori Momo ignored it, she only has Ichimaru Jin in her eyes now. Ding. Zanpakuto was blocked. The vice captain of Division 3, Kira Izuru, stands in front of Ichimaru Jin. Kira, why? Hinamori Momo glared at his friend, not understanding why he stood in front of her. But Kira Izuru said coldly, I am the vice captain of the third team, and I will never let anyone easily swing a knife at my captain. At the same time, Natsuki standing next to Zaraki Kenpachi. But he looked at Kira Izuru curiously. With his current strength, he could sense whether the other party had killing intent. And according to his perception, there is no killing intent on Kira Izuru's body. Seems to be just trying to stop Hinamori Momo from making mistakes. Pity, Hinamori Momo, who is already angry. Unaware of his friend's kindness towards him, he directly liberated Zanpakuto, Bloom, Fame. The Zanpakuto in the hands of Hinamori Momo changes. See, even if Kira Izuru doesn't want to play hard. But in desperation, he also had to free his own Zanpakuto, lift up, Wabazuki. Both parties completed the liberation of Zanpakuto. The atmosphere on the field suddenly became tense, but at the moment when the two were about to fight. A white figure Shunpo is coming. Stop. Hitsugaya Toshiro stood between the two of them. Seeing that the fight was stopped, Zaraki Kenpachi spit aside boredly, then looked at Natsuki, and reminded in a low voice. Hey, I've finished watching the excitement, it's time to go. I know, but I'm not in a hurry. What are you, Captain Shinigami, worried about? Could it be that you're afraid? Listening to the urging of Zaraki Kenpachi, Natsuki was not in a hurry at all, and even had the heart to tease the other party. To know, he has the power of Shinigami and is dressed in a deadly costume. As long as they don't die, these Shinigami who haven't seen his appearance, it is impossible to know that he is an intruder. You are so brave. Zaraki Kenpachi can't help skimming Natsuki's shoulder. At this time, the right arm of Natsuki's deadly costume is hung with the Sawgrass team badge of the 11th team. To be frank, even Zaraki Kenpachi's insolent character. It never occurred to them that Natsuki, the intruder, was so bold as to pretend to be a member of the 11th squad to watch Aizen's death scene. But what he didn't expect was that, in order to fight Natsuki one more time. Unexpectedly, he spoke quickly and agreed to such a request that sounded absurd. Zaraki Kenpachi, who knows that something is wrong, just wants to take Natsuki and escape quickly, so as not to be noticed by the other captains present. But Zaraki Kenpachi forgot, his tall body has always attracted people's attention. The two bowed their heads and whispered, and immediately attracted Toshiro's attention, walked towards them and asked curiously. Captain Zaraki, are you okay with your injury? Do you need to go to the 4th team to deal with it? Toshiro wanted to ask for information about the invaders. But seeing the traces of bandages on Zaraki Kenpachi's body, I still feel that it is better to care about the other party's injuries. No problem, everything has been taken care of. Suddenly stopped by Toshiro, Zaraki Kenpachi felt a little uncomfortable, but responded with a grin. The other party said so. Toshiro will not continue to ask questions. But when he was about to inquire about the intruder's news, he saw a tree beside him, frowned slightly, and asked in thought. Who is this? I don't think I've seen it before. Moment. Zaraki Kenpachi's heart beats faster. Oops. Natsuki is pretending to be a team member, I'm afraid it will be exposed. Who is this? Hitsugaya Toshiro looked at Natsuki and asked. Of course, even though it was a question, his eyes were on Zaraki Kenpachi, who was on the sidelines. This is. Zaraki Kenpachi didn't know how to answer. Unexpectedly, Natsuki took the initiative to walk up to Toshiro and introduced himself. Captain Hitsugaya. Accompanying medical staff in the next 11th squad. Captain Zaraki's injury is too serious. Vice Captain Yachinryu ordered me to stand by Captain Zaraki at any time. The accompanying team doctor. Not only Hitsugaya Toshiro heard. Several vice captains on the side also heard the introduction. Certainly, Natsuki dares to introduce himself like this. Purely seeing the absence of Abarai Renji and Byakuya Kuchiki. The other Shinigami don't know themselves, so Natsuki says whatever he wants, as long as it's not too outrageous, basically no one will doubt it. Ichimaru Jin may know something, but when Hinamori Momo and Kira Izuru got into a fight, he turned and left. And at this moment, after listening to Natsuki's self-introduction, Toshiro subconsciously looked at Zaraki Kenpachi. Especially looking at the other party's heart, abdomen, shoulders and other bandages that are still oozing blood, he couldn't help but nodded in approval. Indeed, Captain Zaraki's injury can't be ignored. So far, Natsuki's identity is perfect. Toshiro ignored Natsuki and started asking Zaraki Kenpachi for news of the invaders. Pity, Zaraki Kenpachi doesn't like him at all. Huh. Intruder, if you want to know so much, go find it yourself. After saying a word, he turned around and left. Seeing this, Natsuki hurriedly followed, as if he was really accompanying the team doctor. Captain Hitsugaya. Several deputy teams stepped forward to appease. Toshiro waved his hand to show that he didn't care. Then he looked at the two people who were subdued, frowned, but still ordered to the deputy team. Take them down and reflect on yourself, after leaving Dongda Shungbi. Zaraki Kenpachi glanced at the tree beside him. You're pretending to be pretty, even that genius kid was fooled too close by you. Small meaning, but compared to this, I'm more curious about that side. Having tricked Toshiro, Natsuki felt nothing to be proud of. Instead, he looked into the distance and faced the night. Although it was blurry, he could still see unique buildings. Zaraki Kenpachi looked over, seeing the faint outline of the penance palace. A sinister smile rose from the corner of his mouth, and he asked, do you really want to save Rukia directly? Yes, I'm going to save her. Natsuki didn't deny it. Really? Zaraki Kenpachi stopped suddenly. His demeanor became serious, and he stared at Natsuki's face carefully, as if intending to keep his appearance in his mind. Then he walked forward on his own. After walking for a long time, a faint voice came from a distance. Hey, Natsuki, don't die there, remember, you still sent me 2 battles. Sound falls. Natsuki smiled slightly. Who said Zaraki Kenpachi is crazy like a beast? Isn't he really smart? Don't worry, I won't die here easily, especially before seeing the real excitement. Sound falls. Natsuki accelerated towards the penance palace. The scene of Aizen's suspended animation has been brought forward, which means that Seirei's defense force will be more stringent. If you don't take this opportunity, if you want to rescue Rukia directly, I'm afraid it will not be that simple. Therefore, Natsuki rushed forward at an extremely fast speed, and a faint blue afterimage flashed across the night sky. However, while remaining swift, the movement is very light. The afterimage has passed countless Shinigami, but no one can find his trace. It's getting closer, it's getting closer. The distance to the Palace of Confessions is getting closer and closer. With Natsuki advancing at full speed, in just a few minutes, he arrived in front of the Penance Palace. Just cross that drawbridge. You can come to Rukia and rescue her. But, at this time, Natsuki, who was running all the way, seemed to have noticed something, gradually stopped, looked forward and sighed softly. I didn't expect that it was you who stood in front of me. Sound falls. A figure slowly walked out from the other end of the suspension bridge. The white Captain Haori, the star leading pliers symbolizing nobility, and the neck coin named Silver and White Windflower Yarn. Gotei 13, Captain of Division 6 Byakuya Kuchiki. Is this how you saved Rukia? If that's the only way, then let me end your steps. Looking at Natsuki, Byakuya Kuchiki's voice is extraordinarily cold. In vain he thought that Natsuki had some good solution, but in the end it was just as he said, jail robbery. No way. Natsuki looked at Byakuya Kuchiki and sighed softly. Things have changed. I can't just follow the original plan foolishly, can I? Things change? Byakuya Kuchiki stares at Natsuki. But the news I just received came to my mind. The captain of the 5th Division Aizen Sosuke died. At the same time, listening to this rhetorical question, Yuan Shu nodded. That's right. You died as a captain, and it happened to be died on the day we entered Seirei. Anyone would mistakenly think that we did it. Talk half. Natsuki paused suddenly, pointing to Byakuya Kuchiki, he said with a faint smile. For example, don't you also think so? I killed that Aizen captain. Byakuya Kuchiki's expression remained the same. Even though his thoughts were guessed by Natsuki, The guess in his mind was that Natsuki killed Aizen Sosuke. Hehe. Watching Byakuya Kuchiki's performance, Natsuki knew that he was right. The flash of killing intent when the other party saw him was not like it was caused by a prison robbery. Then, Natsuki walked forward slowly again. While walking, he touched his waist and said indifferently, "You think so? I'm afraid I can't easily change your mind, so." Byakuya Kuchiki stared at Natsuki. The next moment, Natsuki suddenly drew his sword out of its sheath, pointed it at Byakuya Kuchiki, grinned and said with a smile, "Since you don't believe me, then let me fight until you believe it." Sound falls. The violent Ryotsu burst out in an instant, and went towards Byakuya Kuchiki's merciless oppression. Boom. Swelling fury Ryotsu. In that instant, it exploded from Natsuki's body, pressing down on Byakuya Kuchiki mercilessly. The faint blue Ryotsu ruthlessly overwhelmed the sky of the penance palace. Crushing. This Ryotsu crushes everything it encounters along the way: suspension bridges, stone slabs, hemp ropes, iron bodies. Wherever you go, all crushed into the most primitive spiritual form. At this moment, Byakuya Kuchiki's eyes flashed with shocking luster. "Are you crazy? What the hell is this guy Natsuki doing?" Unleashing such a massive Ryotsu was almost a devastating blow to the penance palace. "You bastard. Are you angry because you were blocked?" Looking at the dark blue Ryotsu pressing towards him, Byakuya Kuchiki couldn't care less about 373, violating the first-level prohibited items regulations. Pull out the waist Zanpakuto with one hand, with the blade facing upwards, he whispered, "Scatter it, Senbon Sakura." And at this moment, Ryotsu pressing here turned into a blue wave and devoured Byakuya Kuchiki. But in the next instant, the faint blue wave blasted a gap. Countless blades like sakura flowers surround Byakuya Kuchiki, resisting Ryotsu's scour. At the same time, these sakura flower blades keep spreading. Try to intercept all the coming blue waves to avoid causing more damage. However, scattered blades, facing this condensed blue wave, it's like a mantis holding a cart, useless. Boom. The monstrous bang exploded completely. The entire confession palace trembled with that loud noise. Rukia, who was imprisoned in one of the palaces, opened her eyes incredulously, and hurried to the air leak to observe the situation outside. "Can't go wrong. Just felt Natsuki Ryotsu. Damn it. Why did you come to save me? Go back quickly, Yuanshu." Feeling the familiar Ryotsu in the distance, Rukia was excited at first, and Natsuki didn't forget herself, but after the excitement, there was a touch of fear. Natsuki is a good captain, but here is Seirei, with 13 divisions, commanding countless Shinigami regular troops. You alone, how can it compare to the thousands of troops of Seirei? And the next moment, feeling another burst of familiar Ryotsu, Rukia opened her small mouth slightly again, a little absent-minded. Byakuya. Big brother? Rukia never expected. It turned out that the one who fought Natsuki was his elder brother Byakuya Kuchiki. At the same time, Ryotsu outburst ended, Natsuki exhaled foul breath. At this moment, after the impact of Ryotsu, the surrounding architects were devastated. The original suspension bridge under the two people's feet has been broken and disfigured long ago, making it impossible to distinguish its original shape. And this, but just burst out of Ryotsu. Looking at the damage caused by his own Ryotsu explosion, Natsuki had a hearty smile on his face. This trick from Zaraki Kenpachi really works. After his strength reached the captain level, he always felt that his Ryotsu had no place to squander, which was unthinkable. Today, he saw the scene where Zaraki Kenpachi exploded Ryotsu, and he was inspired. This time directly release Ryotsu. Using this as an attack method with the help of a powerful impact force, it is really not small. Thinking, Natsuki looked back at Byakuya Kuchiki. Especially when the other party wanted to protect the appearance of the confession palace, Natsuki made Natsuki think he was some kind of villain. The boring prologue is over. Next, it's time for me to fight with you, uncle. Facing the staring eyes of the other party, Natsuki tapped Shunpo with his feet, and rushed forward quickly. Standing in the distance Byakuya Kuchiki of Shikai. Listening to Natsuki's straightforward battle declaration, his face was extremely calm, and he said coldly, "Fighting. But Ryotsu has reached the captain level, so it's so shameless. I have no choice but to show you what a real Shinigami is before you continue to blindly indulge in your own strength. The sound fell instantly. Byakuya Kuchiki made a false grip with one hand, Senbon Sakura reappeared in his hand, and then slowly took a few steps forward. Watching this scene, Natsuki's eyes flashed suddenly. Instead of slowing down, it speeds up Shunpo's speed. Rub. Lightly tap the foot, and the figure disappears from the spot in an instant. Next moment, his figure appeared in front of Byakuya Kuchiki. Looking at the uncle in front of him, he raised a smile on the corner of his mouth, and said hello. Before you meet the real Shinigami, I will give you a trick Jueingsha. Sound falls. Zanpakuto slashed away without hesitation. Because the chopping speed was too fast, an afterimage of the same movement appeared behind him. Jueying slash, originally developed to be used with Yoli, is specially used for medium and long distance strikes, named after the afterimage. Absolute shadow slash. It's just a bluff. Seeing the slash coming towards him clearly, Byakuya Kuchiki didn't panic at all, and even stretched out his left hand indifferently, trying to grab the slashing blade. But the moment his hand was about to catch Zanpakuto, but seeing the corners of Natsuki's mouth curled up, and at the same time, an inexplicable tingling sensation gathered in his hands, which made him subconsciously finish. ZZ. Zanpakuto flashed an arc, crescent moon and Tiantian zero distance change. The skills used in the battle with Byakuya Kuchiki in the present world are reproduced. The arc on the Zhanshin sword is not a real arc, but the product formed by the real tree gathering high concentration Ryatsu on the tip of the knife. Action single 2.0, but it's simple and crude, it only has the effect of increasing penetration. If Byakuya Kuchiki really grabbed the tip of the knife just now, this high concentration of Ryatsu could penetrate his left hand in an instant. However, Byakuya Kuchiki stopped, but it doesn't mean Natsuki will stop attacking. Boom. The slashing movement continued, and the Linglai knife glow raged. With such a distance, Byakuya Kuchiki couldn't dodge at all, and a sharp pain hit. Next moment, Byakuya Kuchiki's figure Shunpo is a few meters behind. His eyes were fixed on Natsuki, and although he didn't say a word, he subconsciously pressed his left arm with one hand. I saw. Tick tick tick. The blood dripped slowly from the left arm, the color was eye-catching.